Could I have your attention, please? We're ready to start the meeting. If everybody gets seated, we can start the meeting. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jerry Venezia. I'm a member of the school committee and the secondary school building committee. And on behalf of the secondary school building committee, I would like to welcome you to tonight's meeting. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to update you on the status of the high school, middle school building project, and also to discuss with you the additional funding that we are going to be requesting. We are going to give a brief presentation tonight, and I just take a look up front, you can see the agenda. We're going to talk to you about the guaranteed maximum price, which we just recently received from our contractor. We're going to talk to you about the additional funds that we need to complete the project, the tax impact, the impact on the campus, the impact of the educational experience, consequences of a yes or a no vote, the important dates that are coming up, including the town meeting and the general election. And then we're going to open it up for public comment and questions from the audience. Joining me tonight in the presentation, Sean Delaney, sitting to my right. Sean is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and is also a member of the Secondary School Building Committee. Beside him is Kathy Willis, the superintendent of schools, and then John Bernard, the principal of North Reading High School, and Kathy O'Connell, the principal of the North Reading Middle School. To my left is Don Kelleher from the Finance Committee. Again, after the presentation, it will be fairly brief. We will open it up for questions and for comments. I'd like you to hold your questions and comments till that time. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Kelleher to come up to the microphone.
Thank you. Good evening. We're going to start with the cost impact and the tax impact of the project. The guaranteed maximum the guaranteed maximum price on the project is $101,452,133. This is the price which the construction manager, Grace Gildane, will build the school as described in the drawings. The drawings include all of the items that we have previously shown as being removed from the project if the request for additional funds is not voted on favorably. The GMP was arrived at by Gildane's estimators, taking into consideration the subcontractor bids already in place and their estimated, as well as the estimate of where the rest of the bids will fall. To this, they added a 5 to 10% contingency. If the total construction costs are higher than the GMP, Gildane will be responsible for that increase. If the cost is below the GMP, the underwriter will revert to the town in the form of lower borrowings. So they have set the price that they will build the building. We know what it is going in, and it is the price that they've determined based upon the plans and their expectations of what escalation or unknown items are in the plans. The next part of the price is what we've deemed the soft costs. These are primarily the professional costs of the project. The main components of these costs are the architectural costs, the cost of the owner's project manager, the feasibility study that was done at the very beginning of the project, $1 million that was authorized both for the study initially, furniture, fixtures, and technology, and the owner's contingency. That brings the total cost to $122,652,133. The original appropriation for the project was $107,727,074, which brings us to a difference in the cost of $14,929,059. The Secondary School Building Committee felt it was prudent to add some additional owner's contingency to the project. We originally carried $4.3 million in contingency, and this addition of $594,074,000 would bring that contingency to $4.9 million. Like the CMF risk contingency, any amount not used will revert to the town as lower borrowings. So So the maximum additional funds that we need to construct the project is $15,500,000. This is the amount we need to deliver the school we all envisioned last year when we so overwhelmingly endorsed the project. We all regret that we have to ask for additional funds, but the reality is the project cannot be built to the town's expectations without these funds. The alternative, as you'll see later in the presentation, will be to cut even more out of the project to fund the inevitable delays that design modifications and extending the bidding process will entail and have a detrimental impact on the educational experience of our children for years to come. The tax impact that everybody is going to feel. The other numbers are big numbers. There's the cost to build the building. This is what it's going to mean to each of us in terms of what we're going to see in our tax bills of every quarter. Borrowing an additional $15.5 million over a 25-year period would result in added tax to the owners of the average home and not ready valued at $450,000 of $176 a year. This tax increase will not appear on your tax bill until the funds are actually borrowed, which probably will not happen for at least a year. We haven't borrowed all of the money from the original appropriation. We will borrow the balance of that. We'll borrow this as we need it. So all the construction costs, obviously, are spread over a long period of time over the total project. So we'll borrow the money as needed, and as I say, the tax impact won't be felt over not a period of bill until we do borrow. Last year, we provided an estimated tax increase for the same $450,000 home of $700 per year. Adding this additional borrowing will bring that total cost to $876 per year. There was some confusion, probably a lot of confusion on the tax bills that went out last quarter. And the reason was that the total of the tax for this fiscal year is included in the last 2 quarters of the tax bill. The first 2 quarters of the tax year always is an estimate based upon the previous year's taxes. And then in the second half of the year, there's a true up to the actual cost. Most years it's truing up a 2.5% increase. This year it was a bigger increase. So there's a bigger hit in the tax bills in the second half of the year. But I would add that the taxes came in on an annualized basis where we expected them to come. It wasn't the full $700 because we didn't borrow the full $60 million that was appropriated at the last year. We borrowed $50 million of that, so that $700 with the amount shown in the tax bill is about $575, which is a prorated share of that $700. The tax impact of this additional borrowing is $39 per $100,000 in valuation. So you can estimate your own personal impact by applying that factor to your own situation. This is a burden to many residents of the community, but the alternative is more costly and will not deliver a school that is satisfactory to any of us. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Rose to talk about some of the other factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelleher. During the last 2 information forums, I provided detail to the community of items identified as potential cuts to the construction budget, and some are more dramatic than others. Originally, these items were identified so that the Secondary School Building Committee could bring the construction budget back in line with the original amount of $86.5 million voted by this community. As the difference increased between the estimated construction budget and the actual construction budget, the serious consequences of the extensive cuts to the project campus and their effect on the educational experience became evident. The 21st century state-of-the-art middle school and high school approved by this community exactly 1 year ago will be dramatically different if no additional funds are approved. The lists that will be shared with you tonight again are not even close to the complete list of cuts to cover a $15.5 million deficit, but they do begin to frame the extreme situation we now face. If you take a look at the screen behind me, you can begin to see the list of items that impact the campus, and they include the traffic light that I've spoken about previously, the landscaping, as well as the vinyl tile flooring throughout the entire campus. This second slide continues to detail some of the other items that will have an impact on the campus that I have spoken about previously, and they include the district office, as well as the brick building facade, and the pavement top coat for parking in the driveway areas. While this list has a significant impact, I now want to bring forward the principal of the high school, Principal John Bernard, and the principal of the middle school, Principal Catherine O'Connell, to speak to you about the impact of the educational experience on our students if there are no additional funds approved. Mr. Bernard, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mrs. Willis. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the superintendent indicated, and as this slide indicates, Mrs. O'Connell and I are going to speak to you about what we believe the impact will be to the educational experience that we hope for all students who attend middle school and high school would be afforded to them. The absence of these items, we believe, would have a substantial negative impact on that experience. The slide indicates that you see here now what I would call similar groupings for the educational experience afforded to students in athletics and extracurricular activities. Those of us in education and parents, I'm sure, believe that there's a certain well-roundedness and a contribution to the student development that we all hope for children as they progress through school. And co-curricular activities and athletics are a significant part of every child's education. For us at North Reading High School, we have a vibrant athletic program. Right now, in recent seasons, we're averaging over 300 student athletes participating in athletics. Our sports program is doing well. In fact, just as an anecdotal note, I would offer to you that last week I learned that North Reading High School is currently ranked number 7 in the state of Massachusetts in terms of its win-loss percentages. That's up from number 21 last spring. So with a good spring season, we could easily advance that standing as well. And I think that's an important bit of information for you all in attendance tonight and for the community to know, because I think it speaks well of our student involvement in extracurricular activities. And without having proper facilities for them to be able to engage in those kinds of activities, I believe would be a very serious detriment for their total development as students. Along with that, co-curricular activities too, things like our theater program and all of the clubs and activities that we offer to students that we hope for them to be involved in to help make them the best citizens that they can be. When I look at the list, and I ask you to call your attention to it as well, when we look at the absence of an athletic field, team room building, we would have quite a distance from the school, students out on the new turf field. If we were using that for gymnasium and physical education classes, we would not have opportunities that we would like to have, because students would be so far from the school that if they needed to use the lavatory as an example or needed the attention of a school nurse, they would be quite a distance away. We would not have locker room facilities nearby to the turf field. We would not be able to store equipment properly for use on the field. All of those have a substantial negative impact on the student. The rubber fitness flooring, we are very excited about the possibility of an auxiliary gymnasium in the new school, and the rubber fitness flooring, if that were omitted, would not allow us to offer some of the programs that we hoped to offer, such as dance, gymnastics, and yoga. Tennis courts, I think it's pretty well known that the tennis courts would be eliminated from the project if the additional funding were not secured, and I think that's a detriment not only to the students who attend the school, but also as a community activity as well. We have, again, a very substantial tennis program. We have students nearing 50% participation rate just the last spring season. The sports fields. In the design currently, there is a plan for a ball field, practice field, recreational field use, to support our athletic programs, and just for students to go out and throw a ball around, for our ultimate frisbee team to use. Again, we believe strongly that the busier that students are, the more engaged they are, the better student, the better citizen they can become. If I could now call your attention to the auditorium situation, I think it was mentioned at the last forum that if the additional funding were not secured, that the auditorium would not have any seating in it. I can't even imagine what use that space would have without seating in it. It is not designed such that even folding chairs could be brought in because of the slope of the auditorium design, and it just would not be a usable space for any kind of support program that we might want to offer to our students. The auditorium lighting and stage equipment, again, those would have to be, if the funding were not secured, they would have to be additional items added on if the funding was sought through the town. Similarly, in the gymnasium with no seating, no bleachers, again, the programs that we offer in the gymnasium would be substantially affected in a negative way. The basketball hoop motors, the gymnasium that's designed currently for the new middle high school is a very large gymnasium facility, and it's a multi-use. We had hoped that we would be able to run games simultaneously with gym divider curtains and the basketball hoop motors not being installed. It would be much more detrimental to be able to do that, thus not affording our students the kinds of opportunities that we would hope to be able to offer to them.
Good evening. Kathy O'Connell, principal of the middle school. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the impact to the educational experience if the additional funds are not granted. Mr. Bernard spoke to you briefly about the gymnasium. The gymnasium is designed for the middle school and the high school to share. So at any given time during the day, there would be 4 classes participating in gym, middle school students and high school students. Without the gym divider curtain, it clearly affects the instruction. It affects the distraction of the students if there are 4 classes happening at the same time. It would be as if a classroom teacher were teaching without walls to separate. I'm also going to speak about window coverings in the classrooms. And from a heat perspective, window coverings keep heat in, and they will help make the buildings more energy efficient. But from a visual perspective, the window coverings help filter sunlight, and during the day, without window coverings, it would obviously affect both teachers and students' abilities to see as well. And clearly that is something that affects their ability to engage in their learning. Marker and tack boards or bulletin boards are an essential part of any classroom. Teachers use them daily to list on the whiteboards, to list things like homework, lesson objectives, lesson agendas, important information, essential questions for students to see when they come into class. And without those, they would clearly be able to give visual instructions and visual information, but having it written on the board is very important. Having the bulletin boards, when I walk into a classroom, I love to see on the bulletin board student work displayed, to see how proud students are, to see their projects, their assignments displayed on the bulletin boards. Without those, it would be very challenging for teachers to be able to display not only student work, but also enrichment posters, and again, any important information that teachers want to share with their students. The bulletin boards and whiteboards are essential. Cooling in the schools, if the additional funding is not granted, there would be no air treatment. There would be no cooling of any kind in the building, which would affect the air quality during the day for the students and the teachers. And the audiovisual equipment is something that would be seen or impacted throughout both buildings in the large group spaces like the library, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the foyer. The classrooms would have large projection screens to again display important information that the teachers, the administration want to share with the students. So when they're walking down the hallways, they may see a large screen giving them information about a change in schedule for the day or other important information that they may need. Or again, student work. We're becoming digital learners, and more student work, student portfolios are able to be displayed on the large projection screens, which is a great opportunity for all of us to make our work public, and it would be a shame to not have use of that technology. So all of the, the areas that Mr. Bernard and I spoke about really impact the educational experience for the students. And I'm going to now turn the microphone over to Sean Delaney to talk about the vote consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. Vote consequences, a no vote. The listed items that have just been reviewed by our two principals and our superintendent don't add up to the $15.5 million that is being requested from them. This is an ongoing process with the building committee and professional teams to try to identify those items. They'll have to be removed from this project if in fact the community does not support this additional request for funding. It's been difficult to do this because the building as originally proposed was not and is not a Taj Mahal. In addition thereto, the items that you see on projection screen behind me, the committee has struggled with staying away from anything that impacts square footage or educational program. We're on that line right now. And I say we struggle with that because that's an automatic review by the MSBA, subject to ramifications of our reimbursement. If there's a no vote, this is what will have to happen. The GMP, which is on and open right now, we have 90 days to accept or reject the guaranteed maximum price. If there's a no vote, the GMP needs to be rejected because we don't have the funds to support it. What happens at that stage will be a redesign of the building project. Rebidding will take place. That feeds into delay in the construction schedule. At a minimum, there will be a 7-month delay in the construction schedule. As presently scheduled, if the additional funding is approved, the sequence of events will take place in this way. The high school, new high school will be completed in the summer of 14 of next year. The middle school remodeling and reconstruction will begin next summer. That will be completed for the middle school to reopen in the fall of 2015. If there's a no vote, with the redesign and the rebidding that has to take place, in all likelihood, the high school will not be completed, whatever that turns out to be. Certainly not what was originally presented to the community and supported by the community here ago. That will be completed sometime around Thanksgiving of 2014, which means there'll be a delay in when the construction team could get into the middle school. Middle school, that construction will not begin until December of January. December of 14 or January of 15. There is your 7-month delay. The cost of that 7-month delay is approximately $3 million. Is the delay cost in total are approximately $400,000 a month. That's why I say that delay cost, if it is minimum of seven months, will be approximately $3 million. So now we're building on the additional monies that will, additional value that will have to come out of the project. It's the $15.5 million of those items that you see behind, plus more. In addition thereto, the $3 million in just delay costs. So now we're up to $18,500,000 of value that we have to take out of the building project. In my opinion, we don't take $18,500,000 out of this project unless we touch the square footage or the educational program, which then, and let me just stop right there. These items here that you see behind me, most have an MSBA reimbursement factor to them.
except for the district office and the tennis courts. All the other items have a reimbursement factor. So with each item we remove, we lose a portion of reimbursement right there. That's an additional sum of value that we'd have to take out of the building project. In all likelihood, we'd have to take out about 20 to 25% of the value, the original value of the project, in order to meet the original construction cost estimate of $86,500,000. You're talking somewhere between $25 to $30 million in value that we have to pull out of this project. The marketplace cost escalation. We don't have that right now if the additional funding is approved. Gilbane has provided the GMP. Their GMP is locked in and guaranteed. Their GMP covers what is now their cost escalation. They've taken on that risk. If the funding is not approved, GMP is rejected, redesign takes place, rebidding goes out. All that time, what's happening in the market, square footage costs will just continue to escalate. There's an additional cost factor there, additional value we have to take out of the project in order to meet the original appropriated construction cost estimate of $86,500,000. Impacts to the operating budget. The operating budget is the annual funding that's provided to the school department to pay teacher salaries, buy books, and the like. There are at least two components of this notebook that have a direct impact on the operating budget. The district office, which is the office space for the superintendent and her administrative staff. What will have to happen is we will have to identify a 4,000 square foot location to lease to provide office space for the superintendent, her administrative staff. That funding will directly come out of the operating budget of the school department. The tennis courts, the additional funding is not approved. That's slated as an item that will not be constructed. As most of you know, for the next 2 years, while construction is ongoing, tennis courts, access to tennis courts will have to be leased for the tennis program to continue performing in the spring season. That cost is $18,000 on an annual basis. Currently, costs don't come down. That'll be an additional cost to the operating budget that'll come out of the school budget. Fragmentation of the project. You can imagine that if the school is constructed without seats, much improved seats than what you're sitting in right now, that at some point in time, the school committee will come looking for a capital item, rightfully so, to put seating in the auditorium. That's a capital item that'll be done down the road at some point in time, 2, 3 years from now. Costs will escalate. That will be done at a certain point in time. Seats in the gymnasium will be asked for naturally at some point in time. So as you see, these items that will be pulled out are going to be requested in some way or some form at some future date. So the project will be at least partially completed piecemeal at a higher cost somewhere down the road. But we will never get what was originally proposed to this community and approved overwhelmingly. Moving on to the easier stuff, the year scope. Well, actually, the year scope, approving the additional summer monies, restores all the proposed eliminated items. The project schedule stays on track. There'll be no additional cost there. It maximizes our MSBA reimbursement. By approving this sum of money, it provides the best value and is financially responsible to do so. It eliminates the impact on the operating budget as I have previously explained. Recommendation. Secondary School Building Committee, Board of Selectmen, School Committee unanimously recommend, as well as the Finance Committee, unanimously recommend the approval of the additional funds to meet the project mission. Thank you.
Okay, just before we open it up for public comment and questions, I just want to remind everybody that we have a special town meeting scheduled for Monday, this coming Monday, March 18th, and that's at 7 o'clock. And then on Friday, March 22nd, 2013, we have the special election for the purposes of either funding or not funding the requested monies. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for questions and comment from the audience. If I can, I'll direct the questions to the appropriate person up here in the front of the room. Yes, sir. Mr. Nathan's Steve's going to bring a microphone over. If you could just identify yourself, sir.
Darren Hunt from Havel Street. I just have a comment and 2 questions. First comment is I sat here through the last meeting and I'm looking at the same list again. I got to say that as somebody that's going to be voting on this, there are some things on this list that I'm actually okay with having cut, and there are some things on here that I think are ridiculous to cut. Why is it that we're only be given an all or nothing vote? Why aren't we given another option? We have 2 options, yes or no. Why isn't there another one where it's some of the funding and not all of it? And my second question is, if the outcome is a no vote, will you be looking for a second vote for maybe a reduced scope?
Well, in answer to your first question, we as a committee, Secondary School Building Committee, have looked at this long and hard now for literally months, and we felt it was necessary to come back and pretty much let the public know which items were going to be reduced from the project and which items, as the superintendent and 2 principals explained, we felt were compelling enough to put back into the project. I guess, when we have a 20-person committee and we have a consensus on these items, that if we were to try and go back and forth on every single item, we could probably end up with a menu of a lot of different choices. But we felt all these things are important to go back into the project, and that's why we're asking for the support of the community to fund these things. And the second, if there's a no vote, either a town meeting or at the election, I think there's a statutory period of time that we have to wait before we can come back again. I'm not sure of the exact rules on that, but I think it would probably be, it would probably result in some delays even if we could come back for another vote.
Starting last summer, the committee worked lots and lots of hours looking at the potential overrun in the project and cut out a number of items which are out of the budget. They were basically aesthetic items that didn't impact the education at all. Those have been removed from the budget. So when we go down to this list here, these were all things that we thought were important that they should stay in the budget, that not necessarily impacting the educational experience of the children, but were important to the project. Things that we took out, although they were important in the appearance of the building and just the look and feel of it, were not absolutely essential. Value engineering is something that goes on in virtually every project to bring it back down to the construction project. But we've gone through and pulled a whole lot of things out of this already, and you're not seeing them because if you went to the building after it was built, you probably would recognize that they weren't there because they weren't an integral part of the building. They were just something that was important for the appearance of the building, but not necessarily important for the educational experience of the kids.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Charlie Douglas. I live on Stone Cleve Avenue. I have 3 questions. My first question, in looking at the MSBA website, there's 43 communities that appear to have projects in various states of construction. So I'm curious how unique North Reading is. How many of those other 42 have had to come back and ask for additional funding? So everyone's going through the same process, so I'd like to understand how unique we are in this whole process. That's my first question.
I'm aware of some towns that have had to come back to funding. I think Andover is one. I can't answer as to all 43 as to how unique we are. But you've got to remember too, that a lot of these projects that these towns are doing are in different stages of the project. You know, we're at the inception of the project, and again, it's our belief that the marketplace from a year ago in March, when we had the first estimate for the cost of the project, has changed dramatically. The cost of everything has gone up, and that's being reflected in the bids that we're receiving. So again, I know there are several projects that have had issues. I can't tell you exactly which ones or how much money or what stage of the project they're at.
Okay, my second
Sean,
question.
do you have anything more to add to that?
I can't speak to the number of the 43 that had to come back. I know, as Jerry said, that there was a number of one-off sites. Duxbury is doing a similar type project in terms of middle school and high school. And I believe their original budget was $125 million, and they are looking for additional funding, or they're looking to do additional value engineering, such as taking out their HVAC system or a portion of it. So, and they use one of the model schools, and I know there's been some talk, why do we use a model school? Based upon the topography of the site that we're working at, the model school didn't work for us. But that's a community similar, roughly similar size. It's using a model school. Their original cost estimate was $125 million, and they have to go back and either look for additional 3, 4, or 5 million, not sure what the actual number is, or they have to take out some major items.
Thank you. And you answered my second question, because it was going to be, why didn't we choose to go to the model school? And then my final question, in looking at how you try to deal with the shortage, did you give any consideration to what you might be able to reuse or salvage from the existing buildings? A simple example being, why couldn't you move the bleachers from this gymnasium into the new building? Why does it have to be brand new bleachers? So I'm just curious about that.
Interestingly enough, we had that discussion last night, and we did actually talk about, when the time comes, having to maybe move stuff from this building into the new building. We haven't got to that point yet, but that is certainly a consideration. I mean, that's not something we want to have to do.
And besides bleachers, there are other, we're not like scrapping both buildings. I believe the superintendent and the principals may be able to speak better towards it than I do, but they've gone through both buildings and looked to see what can be salvaged. I think it was unrealistic at the time. Now we're looking at bleachers, as Jerry said, but it was unrealistic at the time, a year ago, to consider bringing those bleachers over after the use they've had for so many years. Or I don't think you really want us to take the seat.
We'd rather see them bring these seats over to the school, to be honest with you. But we are looking at everything. I mean, we're not ruling anything out at this point in time.
Richard Harris, 4 Mead Road, North Reading. When I looked at the prospects in the beginning, there wasn't a district office, was there, in the original plan?
Yes, there was.
There was a district office or a building?
The district office was included in the original plan. It actually was it's supposed to be located where the large group meeting room is now in the middle school.
Okay. The other part, that you have to build another building down here at the field for the kids and so forth to change their clothes, showers and so forth. Has there been any thought of using the old gym, leaving the gym there, moving the offices for the district office into the A-wing, taking down the rest of it, saving A-wing and the gym for those problems that we have, to save some kind of money at this point?
We absolutely went through that exercise. That was something we probably did 3 months ago. We looked at preserving the gymnasium and the auditorium side and this end of the building for those very purposes. We met with other town officials. We met with the town administrator, board of selectmen, and it was pretty much determined that a couple of things. One, the building's just not in very good shape. There would be a lot of costs associated with taking those buildings over and trying to retrofit them when we demolish the rest of the school. In addition to that, if we do that, we're going to lose whatever reimbursement that we were allocated for taking down the building. So, you know, you'd be leaving this building up and you'd only be getting 50 cents back, saving 50 cents on the dollar because we lose the reimbursement. So we vetted that out completely, and we decided that it just wasn't the way to go.
But the community is always in need of a gymnasium. They use the Murphy School and everything else. There's always a need for the gymnasium.
I agree with that statement. However, town officials, particularly the fire chief and the building inspector, had given us an opinion that this portion, this wing that you're proposing to save, to be considered, would have to be brought up to code for ADA compliant, fire compliant. So that cost alone, just in our eyes, just didn't make sense to keep it. MSBA was against it and lose that portion of the reimbursement.
We had a lot of debate on that. We talked about it at great length, and in the end, it just wasn't going to work out. It was approximately the demolition for the whole high school building, I think, is about $2 million. But it just, in fact, if we were to keep it as a school building, I think the MSBA would reject our reimbursement because we can only have so much gym space, and we're building, obviously, a new gymnasium. And the same with the auditorium. We wouldn't be able to keep both. So we actually explored was turning this over to the town, and I don't think the town wanted it. We met with recreation, we met with a lot of people.
The recreation wouldn't take
They wouldn't.
just the gymnasium part?
They would not.
The heating system, sprinkler system is already in there.
I mean, again, we met with them, and it wasn't feasible.
Okay. The tennis courts, you're going to be paying $20,000 a year for tennis court rental?
We are.
Why wouldn't you put the tennis courts where the practice field is for the football people, instead of putting them back up where they are, up on the top of the hill there, putting them in first now and building them now down here? Wouldn't that make more sense to put them in, be able to use them, save the money on that end, and have them available for the kids in the town at the same time?
Well, the location of tennis courts hasn't come up before. I mean, that's part of the design as to where the tennis courts are going to be. But the issue is the cost of putting the tennis courts in, and that's why you see that on the list. We're trying to reduce the cost, and therefore we're taking the tennis courts out as something that we could certainly put off till later. So that, you know, at this point in time, I don't think the design lends itself to moving them someplace else. But the cost is the real consideration, not the location.
The location of that would be essentially where we're standing this evening. And there's I believe there's a retention area for stormwater, and so forth, that's designed to be in this general location. So
I'm talking about the practice football field, which is over in the front corner over there by the driveway.
Yeah, and again, it's more the cost than anything else, and it's not designed to go to change the entire design of the campus. And again, these are good questions because I'm glad you asked them, because we have deliberated and we've talked about these things. Almost every potential solution, we've sat here as a committee and debated, can we do this, can we do that? And everything we've talked about, we've discussed. I think down here is first.
Hi, I'm Allison Martin from Parsons Lane. I have a couple of questions. So my first question is, it sounds like your actual estimate for construction costs has gone up 17% over the original estimate, and I'm trying to understand what went up 17%. Have we seen as a town through the line item of what those increases are?
Basically, there's several factors here, but to try to simplify my answer, a year ago in March, we believed that the estimate that we received was too low. In addition to that, I think more of a consequence was in the year that's gone by from March of last year to March of this year, the construction costs have gone up. The marketplace has changed. And that's reflected in the bids that our general contractor is getting on various things, everything from concrete to steel to sheetrock, all those things. We've gotten caught in this 1 year period where there was just an elevated cost to almost everything. So not only the bids that they've received, but the proposals, the quotes they're getting, has caused the cost to just escalate. And that's why at this point we have the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price, which kind of locks in all those costs into this number. In addition to that, we did have some issues with the site, but nothing that was really overly significant. We did find some materials there that we had to remove and replace, and that's another small contributing factor. But I think the real problem was that we had too conservative an estimate at the beginning, and then we ran into this construction inflation type of situation that has caused the price to go up.
So, I mean, if you knew that it was too conservative, I guess why are we dealing with it now and not then? I'm new to the town, so I'm still trying to understand sort of, you know, I know commodities have gone up, but it seems like 17% is a big difference. So I'm trying to understand if we can see, you know, really where those numbers, or, you know, what exactly devises that.
Yeah, I can tell you this, when we received the estimate last March, the $107 million estimate, we were comfortable based on the information we had at that time that would be enough funding. It clearly wasn't. You know, we didn't know, obviously we didn't know that then, we know it now, and it just was compounded by the increase in cost.
So I guess, going back to the original question, though, are we going to get a list of what the differences are?
I can give you an answer on a couple of them. Mel,
Yeah.
Sir, the chairman of the school committee. I'll give you two examples. Excuse me. They've gotten one bid in, only one bid so far for sheetrock, correct? Drywall. That bid's $1 million more than budgeted. That's one bid. About 2 weeks ago, the DEP came in and said we had to change the way we were going to take care of the waste coming from the science labs. We couldn't put it directly into the wastewater treatment plant. We had to put in what they call tight tanks. The cost of that, just the excavation for that project, is $965,000, which wasn't in the budget. There's two items for $2 million. I don't know the rest of them because I'm not on the SSBC and I'm not directly involved, but you just look at those two items. Now, hopefully they'll get more bids in for drywall that aren't $1 million over the budget, but that's just two items that ate up a lot of money.
And again, we had additional costs for the site work as well.
But I guess there's still $15 million, I guess, because it's such a... Sorry, there's still $15 million that we're talking about that's added to the budget. I'm trying to understand, you know, what those are.
Yeah, and again, some of it is just that we underestimated the original cost of the building.
My other question would be, you said that GMP includes a 5 to 10% contingency, and is it 5% or is it 10%? Do you know exactly what that is?
Right now, the contingency for the contractor, I believe, is 5%. Okay, that's the contractor's contingency. And then we have a $4.8 million in owner's contingency. So that's the total contingency for the project, which we believe, and we've been pretty much, it's been recommended to us, that contingency is adequate within the number that we now have, the $122 million number.
Okay, thank you.
Brad Jones, Senior, 251 Park Street. I was one of 4 senior citizens asked a year ago to do a 30-second video for cable TV asking voters to vote for this project. Since then, there's been a litany of situations that I'm sure everybody is acquainted with, so that most of the rapture of heart and mind has gone out of this for me. Because I have a town credit card, and this is going to pretty much max it out. So I'm on a tipping point on what to do. And I've struggled with this. If you ask my wife, she'll tell you I sure have, yelling at my TV. So a few questions. First, soft costs of $21+ million. How firm are the soft costs? And what's included in it? I'm assuming the FF&A, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, are all in the Gilbane side of it.
No, the soft cost includes the architectural fee, project manager's fee, the FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and the owner's contingency.
Including moving costs, because you have 3 moves to make in this. And I don't have a strong gut feeling that soft costs are hard costs yet. not in the run rate that we've had.
Yeah, I think, Brad, the moving expenses are actually in the GMP. No? You think? No. Okay, I'm sorry, they are included soft costs. Okay.
Because having been in the moving business through hotels, et cetera, in my life and involved with them, that's a moving target. Moving on. The gentleman questioned some items that are in the cut list, and I won't dwell on them, but two stick out to my mind. One is basketball hoop motors. Manual labor is not satisfactory anymore.
I think manual labor is a good thing. I just think with a new school and a new gym, that it would make sense to put the motors in and certainly to include them in the project.
Huh? Yeah, I do manual. Thank you very much.
I believe he does. But no, I mean, look, it's a good question. And these are just judgment decisions we've been trying to make as to whether or not we're going to have 14 hoops in that gymnasium, and they're going to have to be moved fairly regularly based on gym classes and educational classes. And
I'm merely reiterating some questions I get from senior citizens.
yep, I understand.
There's another line item called cooling in schools, which I guess others would know as air conditioning. Now, how prevalent is that? I can understand it in principal's office, vice principal's office, computer rooms where you have overheating, classrooms. So how broad is the cooling system?
Not my area of expertise, but I am going to say, and I'll let Sean speak to it, that the air conditioning, the air conditioning that we think of as air conditioning would take place, just as you suggested, Brad, in the principal's offices, the administrative offices, and possibly the media center. The classrooms and the rest of the building are not going to be air conditioned. There's going to be a system that will dehumidify the air and control the air. It's not air conditioned air, it's more or less cooled air. Sean, you want to?
It's a residential.
All right. I mean, but that's, so it's not, I want people to understand, we are not air conditioning the entire building. It's a system that improves the quality of the air, and it kind of controls the humidity in the air, which kind of controls the temperature. It's the system that's being put into.
I'm only saying that cooling in schools can be very misleading. Some people try to make a judgment of what to do.
No, the entire building is not going to be air conditioned.
To Mr. Kelly, briefly, we have a $39 cost per 100,000 for this 15.5. What specifically is the cost for the original 108 million per 100,000? Because I don't think enough figures have been given out so each taxpayer can figure based on the valuation what portion of that is for schools, certainly not based on what is I've been reading in the transcript.
Let me try it from the current tax bill, because I think people can relate to what they've seen in this past tax bill. The tax rate went up from 1438 to 1604, so it went up $1.66. $1.32 of that was for the debt service on the amount of money that we borrowed in the first year. We borrowed 50 of the $60 million. Okay.
So for the moment, the average...
No, you're asking what the impact.
Right.
So $1.32 on the tax rate was for 50 of the $60 million. I have to do the math in my head. Okay. So the other $10 million would be another 20% of $1.32, or another 26 cents. So it would be the initial borrowing then, my arithmetic is right, would have been $1.58 on the tax rate. And we're going to add another 39 cents. Okay.
And being a level-funded bonding,
It is not.
this is what you're going to pay in year one all the way through year 25.
The way the bonding was structured was that it's a level payment bond as opposed to a level principal. And the reason that was chosen was that we wanted to have the cost of the project evenly distributed over the life of the project, so that people now aren't paying an additional amount, and people in the later years a smaller amount. If we had gone the level principal payment, what it would have meant was that the payments in the early years of the bond would have been higher and lower in the later years of the bond. So that the people now will be paying more than the folks that are out in the later years. We thought that was inequitable. And that's
I don't disagree, but if somebody wants to figure what it's going to cost them, they can run it out by themselves for 25 years.
That's right.
Subject to whatever slight valuation changes there are in their homestead.
That's correct.
Two more.
We got all night.
You mentioned what the operating budget impact would be if we didn't do this. I'm not sure we've heard what is the operating budget impact if we do it. And I know that's kind of a bowl of jello, but could you make believe it's lemon or lime and give it a shot?
Brad, again, what we're trying to figure out is the difference. Obviously, if we have to have additional resources for tennis courts and for administrative space, there's a clear number attached to that. As far as the additional impact on our operating budget, there's probably going to be some relatively minimal impact because obviously we have 2 full schools now. There's going to be more square footage, but again, everything's going to be new. There's going to be systems in place. I mean, Wayne Haddock, who's in charge of buildings and grounds for us, does a phenomenal job of taking care of all of our buildings. And he's basically at a point now where he can monitor a lot of what's happening in the buildings through his computer and through his systems. But to answer your question, Brad, is there going to maybe be another custodian necessary? That's a possibility, but I don't think there's going to be a dramatic impact.
Basically, you're not sure yet.
Not 100% sure, no. I mean, but I'm looking at a minimal impact on the operating budget.
And lastly, I guess this is more the town father's questions, which I told him I was going to ask. This is a debt exclusion. What else is down the road that we're going to get hit with? Because this debt exclusion for the schools is the same for the next 25 years. And we've heard talk about wastewater, stormwater, sidewalks, senior citizen centers, etc. And to me, as I said, this is kind of pushing my envelope. So there's not much tax relief and debt exclusion coming down the road that I'm aware of. So what can we look forward to, perhaps?
Well, I would say that there is debt exclusion coming off. In terms of a crystal ball of what's coming down the line, I wish I had that crystal ball, but I know this committee's actively working on wastewater, but I would put that in the 10 to 15-year range before we actually implement that. But you're right, I mean, there's always talk about a senior center, which we desperately need. There are other items that will come up in the national reports. As I stand here tonight, do I see those in the 3 to 5 years time frame? I don't.
Well, I would only say that if that's true, find a guy that's sold snow to the snowman, because you're going to need that kind of salesmanship to arrive at it. I would also be remiss if I didn't thank 2 people, Chairman Webster, Superintendent Willis, because I'm well aware of the pressure and responsibilities that landed on this desk, their desks respectively, which I don't expect they expect. And the one thing I have learned about this project is not all the nuts are in Brazil.
Well, we didn't tell the superintendent about the project till we hired her. And then the first thing we threw on our desk, Brad, was the secondary school building project. And I do want to remind you, as always, Brad, those are good questions, but I do want to remind everybody that the reason we're here is that we've already made a commitment for the $108 million. We've already bonded that. We're already responsible for paying it. The reason we're here tonight, the reason we're going to be there on Monday night, is for the additional $15 million. So the obligation we already have, we have it, and we're committed to it. And I do want to remind people that that additional obligation for the $15 million to finish these schools the way they should be finished and completed on time, is an additional $39 per 100,000 valuation. And I'm not minimizing that. I know that's a lot of money for all of us, but I just want to separate the two. That we have a commitment, and now we're just trying to appropriate the additional funds to complete the project. And that, again, is $39 per 100,000. Question?
Hi, Chris Thibodeau, for School Hill Lane.
We know who you are.
A butter. I'm a butter. I have a lot of questions, actually. I always have questions.
Now's the time to ask them.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry. One is actually about the tennis courts. If you knew that you might not have enough funds to put in new ones, why did you take away the old ones? That's my first question.
If you go up there, you can see where the tennis courts are. This is a construction site.
Yes, it was right behind my house, actually.
Where they were.
Yes.
Again, it's based on the overall design. It just wasn't practical to leave tennis courts sitting there in the middle of this construction site.
Even if you knew that you might not be able to put in new ones?
Absolutely. It was necessary to remove the tennis courts. And again, you have to remember that, when we started the project and we started the site, at that point in time, we did not have, or weren't aware of the funding problem that we have now.
Okay, next question is, I think this is misleading, cooling in the schools. Most of this town thinks that this means air conditioning.
I'm sorry, say again?
Cooling in the schools will be eliminated. Most everybody in this town thinks that this means air conditioning in the schools. So I think that needs to be clarified. Everyone's going to vote for this thinking that the kids aren't going to have AC and be sweating all day long.
Yeah, again, it was never in the plan to air condition, as you understand air conditioning, the entire building.
I think the residents thought that the school was going to be air conditioned everywhere.
No, there'll be certain areas that will be air conditioned. The rest of it, again, is going to be controlled. It's going to be a humidity control system that will keep the temperature at a reasonable temperature, much different than what we actually have now.
Okay, finally, two more questions. The rubber stair treads, we talked about this a few weeks ago, and isn't this a safety issue? Isn't there some building code about having something on the stairs for the kids' safety? Or do you have an alternative material that's going to go on them if the vote doesn't pass?
Again, whatever the building code is, obviously we're going to have to comply with. But we're just trying to go through, and it's been a painstaking process with the Secretary of School Building Committee to go through every item in this project and try to save enough money to get down to the budget. It's gotten to a point where we're taking out things that, including the stairs.
Understood, but isn't this a safety issue, though? Can you eliminate something that has to do with safety?
Again, if it's required, we'll do it. If it's not required, it's something we're going to obviously consider saving money on.
Okay, thank you.
I think the gentleman, Steve, in front of you. Thank you. I want to thank everybody that's here for their time as they did that. They can't hear me?
I had a couple of questions, and I wanted to see if you could answer them for me. They took a lot of lumber off of that. Did we ever get reimbursed for it? Did they go towards anything in the town?
You hold the microphone up.
I'm sorry. They took a lot of lumber off the top of the hill. Did the town get reimbursed for that lumber? Did it go towards something during the project?
It was included in the bid.
So the
value of the trees were included in the bid by the forest when they were moved. So people who bid it more, we received the value in the lower bid. We didn't actually get the money that the town didn't take.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve's a member of the Secretary of School Building Committee, so he knows what he's talking about.
Okay. They said these are the only two options that they have. What would they happen if they stopped it right now? Just stopped it.
I guess the first question I'd ask is why would we do that? But
No, but I mean, what would the alternative be? They can stop it anytime they want to.
well, I don't think it's as simple as that. I mean, we have a lot of obligations right now. We have, if you were at the site, I just left the site before I came down here, and I go there every single day to see what's going on. But we have a crane there now that's in place because the steel is coming in on Monday. We have at least 2 deliveries of steel next week. We have obligations. We have contractual obligations with that.
Well, the contractual obligations are into the future by so many weeks. They don't go month by month because things happen in between. You could stop it in 2 months.
I'm just asking you, legally, adhering to the contractual agreements you have, could they do that?
I don't think we could do it without consequences.
As in, what?
Legal consequences, delays in the project. I just, at this point, I just don't see.
If you paid off the contractors what they were expected to get, if no other contractors came online, you could cut it way down to nothing.
Yeah, but for one thing, our GMP is only good for 90 days, the guaranteed maximum price that we have. So if we don't come to an agreement on the GMP in the 90 days, then we're going to be back out there rebidding everything.
Okay, we've already borrowed $50 million. We've spent to date $9 million. We've committed in contracts $40 million. If we stop the project on that $9 million that we've expended to date and received reimbursement, we would have to repay the MSBA, State Building Authority. So those are some of the consequences, the immediate consequences to just stopping right now. If you take a look at the site, you'll end up with a site that I would imagine, I've never been there, but I imagine it's similar to what a Wausau looks like. It's pretty decimated up there with the trees that we moved and the work that's been done.
I've seen it, I know what it looks like.
The work that's been to date.
Yeah.
And where do you go from there? I mean, this community overwhelmingly supported this project a year ago. I am convinced.
No, I'm in agreement with what Lev said. And like I said when I started, I want to thank all of you people that have put your time in to do this, because I wouldn't have wanted to have to do it and justify it in front of everybody.
But I think if the number was known a year ago, I'm convinced that this project would have been approved by this community. We wouldn't be here tonight. Because the need was certainly identified well over a year ago. The need will remain if we stop the project. So I don't view stopping the project as being financially responsible.
I mean primarily putting an end to what we're doing now and programming it down the road further. But even though you're going to increase the cost, like you were talking, $400,000 some odd months, every time you do something like this, it costs more money. Right? In the long run, would it have saved money and then picked it up at the other end? You don't think so?
No. I don't see how that's practical.
Everything's escalating in cost right now.
That I know.
If we had a stop and delay, go back out like this, it's only going to get worse.
Let's not forget, if we just stop, the MSBA is not going to let us just stop like that and continue to hold out our reimbursement. They'll allow us to go through redesign and rebidding in order to get within the budget. But if we just put the brakes on and stop right now, serious consequences. The town has the amount of reimbursement that we're maximum eligible for, $49 million in reimbursement to the community from MSBA. That would be a severe risk if we just stop everything right now.
Well, I just saw in the paper today that the school department's budget went up another 4.7%. Now,
That's a preliminary budget.
I know, I understand
That's
that.
preliminary budget.
And I want to thank the police department for dropping their budget. They did a good job. I had a question about, you're talking about if we didn't use all the money, it would be returned. Would it be returning to us in the form of a tax abatement or into the general fund?
It probably, I think, if Mr. Massari can correct me if I'm wrong, it probably wouldn't be spent in the first place. In other words, if we don't need the money towards the end of the project, we probably wouldn't bond the final amount.
Okay.
Or at the very least, if it were returned, it would be used to pay down some of the debt service.
Okay. One other thing, I just wanted to make a comment before I stop. There was an article in the paper last week which they admitted to these problems, but the line that caught my attention the most is, it's undeniable any additional tax increases will pose a burden for some people in town. Do they ever stop and think about all the people that are on Social Security, that have lived here for 40 years or more, that contributed all this money to make the town what it is today? And when they do this, do they ever stop and think about some way to sort of alleviate the tax burden on those type of people? They've paid for what you have today. We've paid our dues. The gentleman over there, he's concerned about that. I realize it's a hard nut to crack. But in the long run, you're going to meet a point where the value of our education that we've created in this town and the value of what we charge people in taxes will stop people from coming here. There are towns like that already. So while I agree with the project, and I agree with education, because without it, we're nothing. But there's got to be another way to finance this. And that was my other question. If they agree that that's what they're writing in the newspaper, that it's a burden on people, what are we going to do about that in the future? Thank you.
You make some good points, and you ask some very good questions. And again, we obviously considered all this, and we don't unilaterally make these decisions. That's why we came to the community last year at a town meeting, to a special election to ask for the community support. And a town meeting, it was overwhelming support, almost unanimous, and at the election it was 4-1 support. So it's not us getting up here and saying, we're going to do this. We're asking the community, what do you want to do? Same thing we're doing tonight. I understand it is. It's a burden on a lot of people. But I guess what I'm trying to say now is, we spent a lot of money, we're committed to a lot of money. We want to get the best value out of this that we can. And I think the best way to get that value is to appropriate these additional funds so we can complete the project and make it something that's attractive to people who are coming into town to buy houses or coming into town with young children. I think it's a real selling point. So again, I think if you supported the project a year ago, we're asking that you support it now as well, because it's going to be very, very difficult to get this project completed without the additional funding. Rita?
Thank you, Mr. Venezia. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matthew Layton. I'm currently a junior here at the high school. Tonight I want to take a few minutes to express my concern as a student about the building project shortfall from a student's perspective. Before I begin, I want to thank the SSBC School Committee and the Board of Selectmen for working tirelessly fixing the problem that we have at hand. My comments tonight relate dovetail to Mr. Bernard and Mrs. O'Connell's comments they gave earlier. I benefited 1 year from the new Batchelder School. It gave a warm, inviting learning atmosphere, a larger library with more reading space, ceilings that didn't leak, brand new art studios to enhance my creative knowledge, and gave us updated technology. That learning environment built the foundation that made me the student I am today. When the new middle school high school project was presented to the community last year, I was extremely excited to know that my peers could possibly benefit from 2 new schools. Not 1, but 2 brand new schools for the children of this community. I immediately thought back to the batch and how that new facility changed my educational experience. Not only was I excited about it, the whole school was buzzing about the opportunity for a brand new school. When the details of the project were presented last year, I was amazed at the design of the new schools, from the inviting spaces like larger classrooms, working science labs, collaborative spaces, a state-of-the-art auditorium, a larger gym, and especially access to new technologies which are key in the 21st century. When the town voted to approve the project last March, we were all very encouraged about the opportunity to have a new and updated facility. As we all know, the project began based on preliminary estimates. Now that the final bids are starting to come in, the $108 million that the town approved falls short of what we actually need to build the school we voted for last year. Since the shortfall was identified, there have been endless debate, very high emotions, and too much finger-pointing. The talk about cutting items from the project to bridge the shortfall doesn't make sense to me. The items that have been proposed to be cut would have a great impact on the educational experience and the pride that we all expected during the time of the new school. The items that are currently eliminated are window shades, cooling for the administrator's office, AV equipment, auditorium seating, which you're sitting in tonight, lighting for the auditorium as well, gym bleachers, marker and tax boards, just to name a few. And each and every one will have a significant impact on the educational experience students will have at the new middle school, high school. It's hard to believe that something as simple as whiteboards is being cut from the project. I can't imagine classrooms without whiteboards, such a vital tool for teachers to present information to us, as Mrs. O'Connell touched upon earlier before. Like I said earlier, I am a junior. I will never benefit from this new high school, but I want the future students to have the school that was originally voted last year. Put yourself in the shoes of students today. North Reading has lived with 2 outdated facilities for way too long. While the building's still going up, let's not be short-sighted. Thank you.
You look familiar, but could you state your name?
Rita Mullen, 163 Chestnut Street, North Reading. I apologize I came in 20 minutes late. Can you refresh me on a $400,000 home? What's the price of the increase? 450, what was it? 450.
Yeah, it's 450. The additional cost would be $176 a year, over and above the $700 a year that is the cost of the original $60 million bonding authorization.
Okay.
Total for the $450,000 owner of a $450,000 home will be $876 a year.
Okay, thank you. I have an analogy I thought of today. And, excuse me, when this got voted in originally and got supported by the town, the whole town, everybody was pretty excited about it. For the difference of $176 on that average home, I kind of think of it like if you had a root canal, and the dentist told you had a root canal, and you went to the dentist that you've trusted for a very, very long time, which I think of our school committee, Mel and Jerry, and a few of them have been around for a while, and then when Kathleen Willis came and the principal of the high school, it was a group that we trusted an awful lot. So I think of my dentist, if he told me I needed the root canal and I had it done, and gave me a price and told me how much it was going to be, the price was devastating to me, and you'd have to have it done. When you went in and he took the tooth out, and all of a sudden you realized there was some more decay of gum problems, and said it's going to cost a little more money to get it done, you might be angry at the dentist, but you're not going to leave the hole in your mouth, just like we're not going to leave the hole up there for the building. And when we talked about how does this affect us, if we don't do it, the price of our home, and I refer to what the gentleman said, and he's right, a lot of people spent a lot of money. I'm a little over 60-ish, and I spent 50 some odd years paying for taxes, maybe 48 years paying taxes or whatever in town of my family without having children. I have 2 children now that are going to graduate in 2 years that are not going to get the benefit of this school, but I still understand that I have to pay for it because if I'm going to move, again, to have what we have built up there, to say that we can't complete it is not a question. We've made the move now. We have to get it done, and for $176, like I said, it's painful. It was a root canal to do it, but we've got to finish the $176 to complete it. And when we sell our house, if the school's done, the value of our house is going to go up that much more than it does if we don't do it. And a lot of people feel they're being forced out of town. They're better off passing this because when they're forced out of town, their home will be worth money, much more money than if we don't do it.
Thank you, Rita. For the secondary school building committee, it feels like we've had a root canal every day for the last 4 months, to be honest with you.
Nick Bonsalides, Heritage Way. I just have a quick question about the state reimbursement. I'm not hearing anything about the state. If the town approves the $15.5 million, if the state would contribute any additional reimbursement to the town. I was wondering, I'm not hearing it, so I'm assuming not, and I'm wondering why.
We have a meeting on Monday morning at Representative Jones' office. It's going to be attended with Mr. Venezia, Superintendent Willis, and myself. One purpose is to make that ask and that request. We don't expect, because it would be extremely unusual for MSBA to increase their reimbursement, but we felt it was incumbent upon us to make the ask, and that's what we're doing on Monday. We hoped to have that meeting a couple of weeks ago. We weren't able to pull it together. We're meeting Monday morning. some sort of response or answer or some feedback from MSBA on Monday that we can share with everyone Monday evening at town meeting.
Thank you.
Deanna Castro, 9 right away. I wanted to share the same sentiments that Mr. Jones shared and the gentleman who, I don't remember your name, that's in front of us. This is a tipping point for me. As I said the last time I was here, the first time I could come to this forum was February 28th. The first forum I couldn't bring myself to because I still was paralyzed with disgust and disappointment and anger as to what happened, especially since I was such a strong supporter. I felt responsible somehow for these things. Like, did we not do the right, did we not dot our I's and cross our T's? As I stood up in front of the crowd that was here on February 28th, prior to that I sat very silent. My husband will tell you that I've had a lot of sleepless nights, and this has been a very difficult time. I'm sitting next to my sister, who I talk to about every subject, and until March 1st, we could not discuss this because it's such a difficult thing, because this impacts everybody, and a lot of people are going to be struggling with the additional costs. And a year ago, when we were all strong proponents, we never thought that this could happen. We all thought we were going to be assured that that number was the number. And we sold it to the community, and we were all enthusiastic, passionate, and proud. And we thought that was the end of it. As an education and a strong supporter of students in this community, and as an advocate for education, I have 2 children at home who I could barely talk to about this subject. And when I talk to them about the cuts that are possible if the community doesn't come together and support it, their question was, then why are we building this new school? And I guess, so I can share their sentiments. Everybody needs to go to school to get that core education, right? It's a necessity, there's no doubt about that. But outside of the academic classroom, children need an opportunity to share their talents and to learn about life skills and critical thinking and teamwork and creativity, and to show their intellect and the things that spark them, the things that are going to get them up in the morning to go to school. Studying for the pre-calculus class isn't going to motivate them at 6:45 in the morning. But I can tell you with any certainty that if you attended the semifinal game or the quarterfinal game that the boys varsity team had the other night, there has never been a stronger sense of pride and community from the student body that I have ever witnessed. That's what gets them up. Everybody needs a stage, and whether that stage is that stage for the maskers, for drama or performing arts or an a cappella group, or if their stage is a basketball court, or the track and field, or if their stage is the turf field for the marching band, or if their stage is for volleyball or cheerleading. These are the very stages that make them a well-rounded citizen and that give them a safe place to be. Otherwise, they're going to have an awful lot of idle time, which concerns me even greater. So this is difficult for all of us because I realize that this tax impact is going to hurt. And that bothers me a great deal. And I can say with a great certainty that all these education supporters in that school lobby that keeps getting talked about, we're struggling with this too. But the bottom line is, on February 28th, when these cuts were proposed, I thought about where my anger was going to end up and who it was going to hurt the most. And it's going to hurt people like Matt Layton and our superintendent and all of our teachers, you know, as much as everybody else. We made a commitment to support the school. We need to complete the vision. And I'm struggling with the realities that we're all going to have to deal with in making that choice on Monday night and next Friday. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to say that. Mr. Bernard, could you share what you believe to be the impact that a no vote would have based on accreditation as you're going through the accreditation process right now?
Thank you, Mrs. Castro. Maybe just for a little bit of background information, the high school is engaged right now in its self-study to continue its accreditation as a high school. We have a visiting committee coming out in March of 2014 to evaluate us. The last time we were accredited, it's a 10-year process. We were accredited last in 2003. I asked for a year deferment because of the construction project, because that was a significant item that was noted in the report. I actually received the 2003 accreditation report my first month on the job in July of 2003. And the building at the time when it was evaluated was noted as an item warranting significant attention. The process for accreditation is that as the principal, I am to submit periodic reports on the progress we are making toward meeting the recommendations that get identified in the report. And I had to do that on several occasions over the last 10 years. And I'm pleased to say that when the community took the action that it did last March to endorse the project that we're talking about tonight, and I notified them of that, we received a very, very favorable letter back. The high school's accreditation was not in jeopardy at the time because I was able to note at various points along the way that the community had formed a secondary school building committee, was exploring the project. There was a benchmark notification when the feasibility study was awarded, and then ultimately when the project was funded, that was looked upon very favorable by the accrediting agency, which is known as the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. So I'm in a place right now, the school is in a place right now where things look very good for us in terms of our continued accreditation, and I have great optimism that when the visiting committee comes out next March that they will be evaluating our programs and that things will be rated very, very good. But I can't predict how they will look upon the project of the new school if it does not go in the way in which I had informed them that it would when the vote was taken last March. If the building were not to be what I had indicated it would be last year, when the funding was made available, I think it's reasonable to expect that would be looked upon as problematic by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. I can't predict that, but I think it's reasonable to expect that there would be concern for a school that had no auditorium seating, had no gymnasium bleachers, and all of the other things, or many of the other things that were identified on the slides tonight as impacting the educational experience. I would need to notify them. There is a qualification for what's known as a substantive change report. So if any information that I've provided in any communications to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges changes, I'm required to notify them of that change. So I would need to do that if the project did not go forward in the fashion that I informed them last year that it was going to go. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. If anybody else has a question for the superintendent or either of the principals, please feel free to ask as it relates to the project.
Jerry, I just want to make one other point. One of the strong selling points for the school to begin with, in addition to all the other needs that we had already identified and we voted to support on, was thinking about master's programs and competitions and dance recitals that could be held here, and the fact that town meeting is held here, and the community impact team when they bring parents together, and enrichment programs and speakers that are held here in the gymnasium. This is a possible revenue source, as is that beautiful turf field, and the fact that we can host conferences and different competitive sports programs. If we don't have those facilities with the team rooms and we don't have the ability to have seating here in the auditorium, we're also giving up revenue opportunities. Is that not true? And then what do we do from there?
Well, again, that's a good point, Deanna. We didn't bring it up. We were trying to talk about the educational aspects of it, but you're absolutely right. The turf field, the gymnasium, The auditorium, obviously, are all sources of revenue that you can use these facilities for community purposes. You can lease them out to various groups. So there's no question that without the type of facilities that we envision, we are losing potential revenue. And again, that's revenue that can go towards the operating costs for the town.
Thank you. Jeff Ewell, 427 Park Street. Indiana, thank you for echoing my sentiments as of the last meeting that I attended. The benefits of the auditorium and our sports basketball courts and the football field do offer revenue for the school in a way that can help reduce costs for programs going forward. These are all very important. It's important for the community to understand that what the SSBC has done and what the Board of Selectmen have done and what the school committee has done and continue to do has been all for benevolent reasons, for the education of our children. There's a price, and unfortunately, it's a high price. I think that you do need to be complimented for your efforts, but it hasn't been easy. I think that the big problem that I've observed is not so much the errors that have been made or the mistakes that have been made. I think the system itself is a very bad system. When you can come in at 20% and try to get an estimate of what something's going to cost when you still have 80% to go, you might as well go to Vegas and throw the money in that direction, because it's very, very difficult to get those things right. I understand that I think the Board of Selectmen have taken over some of the aspects with the construction company with regard to possibly seeking to see if there's some money that we can get back due to this situation. I'm not sure whether that would really work, because I'm sure the construction company is simply doing what we've been asking them to do since day one. And as long as they continue to do what we ask them to do, I'm not sure we're going to be able to recoup anything in that regard. However, I did attend the first meeting that the increased costs were announced. That was on November 19th, the Board of Selectmen meeting, in which there were about 5 items that were brought to our attention that would cause an increase for this program. And there were two points that were made that I had a question on, and I did question it at that meeting. The big issue to me was the additional steel that was needed for the middle school at the completion of the construction of the middle school to bear extra weight and to deal with snow drifts. And the reason given to me at that time was that it was a 50-year-old building and those aspects were not included in the construction and design documents. To me, that is something that should have been presented by the construction company or by the architect at that time. It's a 50-year-old building, they know it's a 50-year-old building, and they have to live up to today's standards, and have to bring it up to today's standards. So that strikes me that that it's a cost that or a deficiency in the structure that they should have realized at that time, because that's what they do for a living. So it is my hope that that's an area that the panel or the law firm that is handling this for the town will address that issue, because it is something that should have been picked up immediately at that point. But again, I just have to say, all the committees that are involved here are just trying to do the right thing with the limitations of a system that is corrupt by design, and it's very difficult to go forward. We're paying a dear price on it. There are taxes that are going up all over the place. The federal government wants to increase taxes, the state wants to increase taxes, we have local increases in taxes, sales tax, and so on. So we're getting pinched from all ends, and this is a very, very, very difficult decision for everybody involved, seniors, all the way through down to families. So I think that the analogy that Rita gave is an apt analogy. The school does need to go forward. We do need to have the right school. If we're going to have a shell, then we're not really doing the job that we intended to do. So, but if someone could answer that with the steel roof, that would be great. Thank you.
Again, regarding the steel roof, I think it's relatively one small item. I think there's a minimal cost associated with that particular issue, and I think some of it went away as a result of redesign as well. It's not, we were going to put some parapets up there that we're not going to put up now, so it's not going to be required for the extra steel. Yes, sir. Mark? I'm sorry.
Hi, Phil Pace, 2 Tacoma Circle. I just want to make a comment, and just that I'm in support of this. I am voting yes for this, okay? I want to tell you my reasons why, okay? You're asking for $175 a year additional. That's $15 a month. It's a couple of scratch tickets, and you come right down to it. I have 2 children. My son is a junior. So when the high school is finished, he's not going to be there. I have a young daughter. She'll probably graduate for last year. Okay? I'm supporting the school project because it's the right thing to do. Okay? People forget, too, that we had an either-or in this situation. Either we could vote for this project or not, and still cost us $40 million out of our pocket to renovate the middle school and the high school. So here we are. We're paying more, and I know nobody wants to pay more, and nobody can afford it, and that we're all in the same boat. But it's the right thing to do. The other day I went through North Andover. If anybody has ever seen the North Andover Middle School and the high school, it's incredible. It's incredible, and the education there speaks for itself. So I'm just going out on a limb here and telling you that I support it. $15 a month makes us go away. Is that correct?
You're right. I don't want to minimize that, but you're right.
But that's it.
You're right.
That's it. I know people are angry. They're angry at the committee. I think the committee's done a fantastic job. They've done a job that none of us would want.
I can assure you none of you would want.
Time away from your family and everything else, and they're getting hell for it, and they don't deserve it. Really. So I'm voting yes because, like I said, it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. And again, when he was mentioning other communities, and he mentioned North Andover, it's not just North Andover, and I'm not suggesting that we need to build new schools because other towns have done it, but it's North Andover, it's Wilmington, it's Tewksbury, it's Masco, it's Woburn, it's Manchester, Essex, just go through every surrounding community, and they've gone through with these projects. It's not too long ago, Ipswich, and it's our time now. We have the need, we've been promised the reimbursement, it's the time to do it. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. The last couple people have mentioned the fact that people are mad at people and there's finger pointing and blame and so forth. But I think that a clear understanding of the process, would help a lot of people, would get rid of that anger. Jeff's correct, that only 20% of it has to be actually bid in order to go for your reimbursement, to go for your appropriation. But it's a chicken and egg thing. You have to get just so far, and then you have to take the next step, and then you have to go back. So while you've many times said, well, all the costs went up, but the costs went up over what? You were forced into a situation where you got as much as you could, what you had to get. The process required that you then take another step, which is get your appropriation and get your engineering estimates, and then you had to go back and get your real bids. So the net result is the system, and Jeff alluded to that a little, Jeff, you did. that the system itself creates part of the problem that we have here, the way the system works. In a different year, it would have worked perfectly. In a year when you have a fluctuating economy, it doesn't work so well. So the additional costs we have here are not so much somebody having done something wrong or a mistake having been made, as the fact that the way the system works, this is the process you have to go through to do this. So I think that if people understood clearly that that's how it worked, that everybody did the best they could within the system, the way the school building assistance program is run, and the steps you have to take in order to become involved in it, they would understand that there isn't any finger pointing here. Everybody did the best they could to make this work.
I think Warren's right. It is a complicated system, and we have followed it to the letter from day one. You know, we started out by coming to the town meeting for an appropriation to do a schematic design. We got $1 million, and based on that $1 million, we were able to get designs. We were able to bring an architect on board. We were able to bring a project manager on board. We were able to do test borings. And then basically, when we got our schematic design, as Warren suggested, the next step was to go back to the MSBA. They approved our submissions, our requests for these two buildings, and then we had 120 days to come back to the town to get funding and approval. So we've done everything that we were supposed to do, everything that our partner required us to do. Unfortunately, we came up a little bit short on the funding.
Eric Nietzsche, east side of Park Street. I want to take this opportunity to, I'd like to take the opportunity to address what Warren has said and the previous gentleman has said. Just for clarity purposes, I was not here present for the first meeting last March when this project was approved. However, I was here last meeting, and a lot of my feelings were sour last meeting when I first heard that the project was approved for 107.7, and now the same school committee is coming up and requesting additional $13 to $16 million. The three gentlemen that stand before me admitted that we erred because we had an oversight, we didn't see it. Yes, some mistakes were made. I learned this process very quickly. Through the MSBA, only 20% of plans were required to be submitted for the approval process. And I think a lot of the citizens of North Reading, including myself, when we find out that the $13–16 million additional funds were required or needed to complete this project, I myself included were very upset. Because my first impressions and my first feelings were, I think the school committee really did a terrible injustice and mistake by not identifying back last March that only 20% of plans were submitted and there might be a contingency for increased cost. Now, I myself, as a civil engineer, I deal with $1 million to $10 million projects on site, with either residential or commercial projects in every community around North Reading. And every project that I get into, whether it's an EPA project or you're in a planning board development project that gets approved to the planning board, the contractors, along with the clients, always come to the conclusion, how much is this going to cost? At the same time, they say, what's it going to take to get this project approved? So with that being said, I have a few comments and questions to ask, and I think some clarification might address the ease of some minds. Going back to the slide here, and this is just out of order now, the additional $15.5 million on the slide will require an additional $176 a year, which is based on $39 per $100,000 for a house value of $450,000. Clarity for purposes, for myself as well as citizens around me, what would the cost be based on the initial approved 20% rating of $107.7 million? Because I think a lot of citizens here in North Reading will be more at ease knowing that what the difference would be from a 107.7.
The original cost, I think Don went over this earlier, but the original cost of the $450,000 house for the initial borrowing of $60 million, the town share, was $700. The additional cost for the $15.5 million would be $176 on the $450,000, for a total of $876 on that $450,000 loan.
So you're saying $107?
176 plus 700, the total would be 876.
No, I'm sorry. Let me ask you this question then in a different way. If the 176 is, you're saying the 176 is just based on the $15.5 million. So if the project was not, didn't need an extra $15.5 million, and we're going back to the original $107.7 million?
Yes.
What would be the actual increase?
It would be $700.
$7.
$700.
$700. Thank you. Now, this project for the $15.5 million, you said last meeting would be over a 25-year period.
That's correct.
A gentleman to my right had said earlier this evening that this is a lot of money over a 25-year period, and he generally spoke that what's going to come into North Reading as extra cost? Well, North Reading sits within the Ipswich River Basin, and I know for a fact that because the state requirements are changing, more specifically for stormwater pollution control, North Reading is going to be one community that's going to be facing some good major changes as far as stormwater pollution control, because we're sitting in the Ipswich River Basin. So that I do foresee coming down the road, which is going to impact the citizens' tax rate at some point. I myself, as the gentleman has said earlier over here to the side about North Andover, I am a North Andover Scarlet Knight. I went to North Andover High, graduated North Andover High, and I competed against North Reading Hornets during my school years.
Did we beat you?
Well, let me see, my arch rival was Newburyport. While residing and participating in the academic and sports program in North Andover, I was lucky to be a student for 4 years in the, should I say, the old new high school. Well, my high school of North Andover is no longer existing. That was torn down. But that high school was built in the early 1970s. I went to high school in 1974 and graduated in 78. And I don't know the exact year, but somewhere around mid-2000s, that high school was torn down. That high school was supposed to be the model high school of the state of Massachusetts. And that was torn down after a 30-year existence. So my question here is, we have engineers and architects design this supposedly new high school and new middle school for our North Reading people and students. Has the school committee had a secondary peer review on the design of this school? I only ask that question because my old high school in North Andover was torn down because of, should I say, quality workmanship and unforeseen or missed items that were subsurface.
Yeah, I think both schools, the middle school and the high school, have stood up pretty well. I mean, they're both 50 years old or older. They've been well maintained, but again, not a lot has been done over those 50 years. And I can tell you in the middle school, practically nothing's been done. The only thing we've done in the middle school is I think we fixed the roof and we put a new rubber floor down in the gymnasium. And if you walk into that school, you walk around that school, you're going to see there's been very little else done in the way of capital improvements. Again, the school's very well maintained, but you can take a look around here, there's a lot of deficiencies. But sorry, I want
That's the existing school, but I'm talking about the new school. Has the school committee had a secondary review of the design of the new school?
I'm not aware of that process, so the answer is, I guess, no. But I want to get to the next person who has a question, so if you could wrap it up.
I will wrap it very quickly. You're saying that the $15.5 million that the owners will have, will be receiving an additional $574,000? Is that what I understand, based on their increase?
Say that again?
Did I get on the slide that because of the extra $15.5 million, the owners will be receiving an additional $500,000.
No. The owners are us, the owners of the town. So when we did it, we added an additional $500 and something thousand in owner's contingency just to cover us for anything that might come up unexpectedly.
Okay, all right, thank you. That takes care of that. And my last question is this. Mr. Bernard had mentioned earlier, as well as Mr. Connor from the principal for middle school had mentioned earlier that tennis courts. I was wondering if the school committee or the school committee has taken any thought into the Ipswich River Park. When the Ipswich River Park was built, that has tennis courts and fields. I was wondering if the school committee or anyone else part of the school committee has taken into consideration, is there a need to really have additional fields in tennis courts based on the use of the existing fields and tennis courts for the Ipswich River Park?
I'm gonna have Mr. Bernard come up and then I just want to move on to the next person. But all these things we've vetted out.
We did, Mr. Nietzsche. We looked at the possibility of expanding the tennis courts that exist at Ipswich River Park to accommodate the high school teams, and it was not possible. Where the courts are located, there was not enough room to add a third court. We technically need 4, but we were hoping that we could get away with 3. That would have been helpful, and it would have been a significant cost savings, but there's not enough land available where the 2 courts are now to add one on.
All right, thank you.
We did look at that last year.
All right, very good. And if I may pause on you one more time, one last question. A lady and gentleman earlier tonight talked about renovation of the existing high school and gym. You commented that because of the situation in the schools, we renovated the back of the school, and instead of tearing down the whole entire back school, we renovated that school to upgrade it to current codes as well as ADA compliant. And are you saying that there is no chance at all to renovate part of the existing high school to compensate for the $15.5 million?
No. We've gone through that process. We've met with town officials, we've met with recreation, and it's just not practical. It's just not going to work.
Going back well over a year ago, MSBA actually said this building isn't worth renovating at all.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. You're on. Anybody else?
If there are other questions, there are a couple questions about tax relief, and I think Mr. Prisco, Selectman Prisco, wanted to address that.
You want to come up here, Mike? This is Mike Prisco from the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Back in October of last year, the Board of Selectmen resurrected a taxation relief fund that had been sitting idle for quite some years. So we resurrected it. Several citizens in town have donated some money towards it. We roughly have about $13,000. So we resurrected the committee. We have 5 members, including myself, and the assessors there, our collector is part of the group. We also have a citizen as part of the group, and we have Mary Kearney from the senior center as part of the group. And the taxation relief fund focuses on the seniors, disabled, and we actually have another new one that didn't exist before, and that's the temporary tax relief. And I'm so happy to say that about 2 weeks ago actually, the committee met for the first time. We received 12 applications for relief. Only 6 actually met the requirements for their application. We reviewed all 6. I'm happy to say that out of the 6, one of them, we're able to actually direct them to other exemptions and other availability of relief that we offer in town. They didn't quite qualify for this tax relief, but we're able to actually help them get other tax relief. Then there was 2 others we actually did vote to give some help to. And I'm not going to announce the amounts or anything, but I like to keep that kind of private because it is a personal matter, but it was very great for me, I should say, as a personal experience to actually do something where we're able to help someone. And you read these letters, and the people are hurting. We understand that. And that's why back in October, the selectmen went forward to resurrect this fund because we knew with the school project coming in the future, what you see going on out there in our community and with the economy, we need to help out any way we can. The $13,000 is not a lot of money. We're not going to award all that money this year. We're actually only awarded about 45% of that. We're going to try to go out and raise more money so we can help others. But one of the key points I wanted to mention is there are, just make sure I get the word right, household income requirements and for the seniors and for the disabled. But for that the temporary tax relief, we're not waiving that because there are some people that have an income, but they're on hard times. It's not one of those things where, just because you decided you wanted to go to the mall quite a bit and go to the movies and go on vacation, and you find yourself a little short, and you're going to come give some relief. It's not that way. But for those that are listening at home, those here in the audience, we do have it, and I would ask that if you really are in that dire straits and you need help, to go down to town hall, grab an application, talk to the folks at the counter, they'll give you some more information on it, and submit an application for next year. The applications are due by February 15th of every year, and we're only doing this once a year. So we've already passed it for this current year, but going into next year, as these tax bills will start to come out, especially the seniors, if you find yourself a little short, please take advantage of this. And I would ask the folks listening at home, if you could spare $5 or $10 and send a check in for this fund, $5 and $10 together will go a long way. Any questions on the fund? Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much. Jerry, yes, question?
I just had I'm Rob Carbone, I'm from NORCAM. I was just curious, with the project, are you eligible to get any sort of philanthropic funding or, say, grants? Like I know, for example, the seating in the auditorium, you might be able to be eligible for a Mass Cultural Council grant for the Cultural Facility Fund. That might be able to help offset the cost. I'm just trying to think of something that could help you guys.
Well, I think those are probably certainly some things that we'll have to look into depending on how this vote turns out. But right now, we've been pretty much busy full-time trying to reconcile those differences and get prepared for town meeting. Are there any other questions or comments? Joe?
Joe Fode, Board of Selectmen. In my full-time job, I'm Director of Public Works for the City of Chelsea, and one of my capacities there, I'm on the school building committee there. And, today, I had the opportunity to go to a seminar at Beverly High School called Story of a Building, and it told the process in which Beverly High School went through to get a new building, and it was attended by a bunch of different people from MSBA, contractors, consultants, and a bunch of different communities. And I had the opportunity to listen to the story of the gentleman who is the facilities director for the school, Bill Collins. Bill told me a story where his grandfather was the principal of the previous school, the old school, and was built in 1965. And he says how they ran out of money halfway through the construction, and how they still went forward with it, but his grandfather told him for the next 40 years they paid for it every single day because they didn't do it the right way. And I thought that was interesting because, I told him we're in a similar situation here, and he said, whatever you do to try to get it done right, make sure you get it done right. But it's interesting that he's now the facilities director there, and he took me a tour of the building, and I'm walking around that building, I'm seeing the way those kids interact with each other, and all the things they do to, and I credit Mr. Bernard and Mr. O'Connell in their staff, so what they accomplish with what they have, but the difference in what you accomplish with when you have so much more, and the environment when you're happy to go to school every day, just makes it a whole different, I spent the day there, and I couldn't believe these were kids going to school, it was just, they were happy to be there. And one of the other things that the principal had said was that more and more kids are staying in the system as opposed to going to private schools because they see what they have. They see that they have an environment where, they can learn, they can do different things. And it just impressed me thoroughly. And they also have the ability to attract better educators, because more people want to go to work in a school like that. The last thing I'm going to say is, Winston Churchill once said, and I hope I can quote this correctly, is, we shape our buildings, but then our buildings thereafter shape us. And it goes back to what Matt said. Matt's a great student. Matt will thrive in any environment. But the ability to do more with what you have is what's going to make him go a lot further. And I think we need to be competitive with schools like Beverly and all these other schools around. And, I just hope that we get past the anger and realize that this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Mr. Simons?
Hi, I'm Jeff Simons, 31 Hickory Lane. And for those of you that don't know me, believe it or not, I've been involved intimately with every 12 of the building override questions that we've had here in North Reading over the past 20 years. I know my way around building projects. I know about the process. I know a lot of the history of what we've done here with buildings. And I appreciate all the work. That's just an incredible amount of work that the SSBC has done and that every building committee did on prior projects. My fear is that it's very easy for them, and then that moves on to our specific questions, to get very bogged down in the details of what you've seen here tonight. I'd like just for a second to kind of take a step back and remind you of the big picture here. And it somewhat picks up on what Mr. Jones said earlier, and that is that this is one project among many that we've done in the past and that we'll probably have to do in the future. It was expensive. It was by far the most expensive project that I know. Mr. Jones, who's old as dirt, he probably knows a lot more than I do. I love Mr. Jones. This is a huge amount of money, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad that Mr. Prisco talked about the impact on some of our low-income taxpayers. We've been very sensitive about that every step of the way, every time a ballot question has brought this to the town. Whether it's a grant or other methods that taxpayers have to have an abatement of their taxes if their income is low, or to defer it till the sale of their home, the ultimate sale of the home. We appreciate the fact that this is a lot of money. But we need it. This is a great project. We passed this last year, 80% to 20%, the highest percentage approval of any ballot override question that we've ever had in North Reading. The town agreed that this is a fabulous project. It adds science labs that we need. It adds a fabulous theater that the whole community will be able to enjoy. It brings much better arts, music space for the high school, and particularly for the middle school. It has very limited space for those types of things. The classrooms are going to be as big as they should be. Right now, they're way too small. It's going to have modern technology. It's going to do all kinds of fabulous things for our students that we need. We all agreed that we needed this. So we've decided to spend that money. The question for tonight is, do we spend more? $176 more for the average taxpayer. I have the average house in North Reading. My house is about $450,000. That's how much we're asking. For the average taxpayer, I would add that additional tax is probably tax deductible. So for me, for probably a lot of people, what we're really boiling it down to here is you're looking for maybe another $140 to $150 per year on top of what we already approved. I think that fact gets lost. What will happen if this fails? I don't want to get bogged down in the individual list, because it starts to bring up questions like this gentleman asked about, oh, what about this item? What about this item? What about this item? Think about what has to happen if this thing gets cut. It's $15.5 million plus delay cost, and most of the items that are going to get cut are reimbursed 50 cents on the dollar by the state. So if you cut off demolishing the high school, if you leave it, and that's a $2 million item, you lose $1 million of the reimbursement. The state is going to give us $50 million. We should take every penny that we can get. Why would we want to lose free money that the state is going to give to us? And the net result for us, too, is for us to really get to $15 million net of all that loss of reimbursement and delay costs, we're probably going to have to cut $20 to $25 million. Now, without going through a detailed list, think about it. What does that mean? You can't reduce the number of the classrooms. You can't reduce the square footage of the building. So what's going to happen? The core classes are not going to change. We're going to have the science labs. We're going to have all of our classrooms. They're going to be the right size. So what kind of things are going to have to go? What we fill the building with. The materials that we use to make the building. How are they going to do this? They don't know yet. It's a huge... Just try to guess. If you were doing a home project, What would you have to cut to reduce 25% of the budget? It's going to be materials that will wear out faster. It's going to be unattractive. It's going to have some things that get delayed for years, and we're going to have to come back time after time and time again at town meetings and either put it into the operating budget or make capital requests, which then put pressure against operating budgets for other things that we need to do, right, Mr. Jones? Okay, so all these things have, we're going to pay for them at some point anyway, perhaps, but if we do, it's going to be way down the line, very disjointed, and we're going to pay the money. The superintendent's office is a great example. You could cut it now, but they have to go somewhere. So that's a rental expense that we're going to have to incur. So please, help me take a step back. I understand it's an awful lot of money, but the issue at hand is, can we do this that much more? Do we really want to spend, if it fails, do we really want to spend $107 million and get a school that's built out of inferior materials and takes the arts and music, the theater, sports fields, athletic fields, all these things take an enormous hit. Do we want to spend all that money and end up with something that we really aren't happy with for years? Or do we want to spend the extra $176 that it takes to just finish the project, get 100% of the school instead of 75% of what we voted for? I encourage everybody at home, everybody here, spread the word, get people to get here Monday night for town meeting, and particularly to the people who voted yes last March. 3,800 people voted yes last March, okay? To those people, it's been said here tonight, but I can't emphasize it enough. If everything had gone perfectly right, if the estimates were spot on, if they didn't find soil that had to be removed, causing all kinds of problems with cost and neighbors and trees and everything else. If everything was perfect last March, I feel in my heart, I know this, it would have passed anyway. I ask you, the people who voted for it, if you had been asked to pay, instead of $107 million, $125 million, wouldn't you have voted yes? And if the answer to that question is yes, then what reason could you possibly have for not coming out Monday and Friday and voting for this additional money? Please think about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Go ahead. I just want to quickly follow up on what Joe and Jeff said, and then I'm going to ask Sean to come up and make a closing statement. But a lot of letters were written to the editor today for the transcript, and there was one by Deborah Hill that I thought was pretty good. And I'm just reading it, quoting a little bit of it. Just following up what Jeff said. She said basically, do you want a less adequate, or less appealing, and inferior, unfinished, unsuitable facility after spending $107 million and have the delays that go along with it, and in the long run have it cost more? Or do you want to appropriate this money now and get the school built, just as Joe had suggested, just as Jeff had suggested? So I too, again, urge you, please, come to the town meeting, think about it. I've heard a lot of people over the last several days in public forums use the words disgusted and angry. I'm not disgusted, I'm not angry. I am disappointed, I am frustrated, but I think the people who I respect very much that have used those words have also said they're going to vote for this because they know it's the practical, common sense thing to do. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Sean for the last statement.
Thank you, Jerry. Anger is the right emotion to have. I had it. I worked my way through it. When this budget crisis first came to light for the secondary school building committee, angered me quite a bit, probably as much, if not more so, than most all of you who are sitting here and who was watching at home. As a member of the secondary school building committee, a member of the board of selectmen, I supported this project wholeheartedly, still do. A year ago, went out and sold it based upon what the entire building committee had thought was an accurate estimate. When it came to light that it was not, anger set in committee-wide. We've had many more months to work through it than most of you as we tried to get the budget in line with what was originally appropriated. So we've had that time, and Jerry, I think, said it correctly. It's still disappointing. However, I ask you not to base your decision on anger. I have learned over my years that when you make a decision based upon anger, and you reflect upon that, it's often, if not most times, the wrong decision to make. I ask you to reflect upon this decision in a rational, logical manner. I think when you do that, I ask you to consider a couple of things. This community identified a need to build 2 schools. You get $49 million of reimbursement from the state. Overwhelmingly, community overwhelmingly supported that, recognized that, agreed with that, overwhelmingly supported that. But here we are. We had a need to build 2 buildings. 2 buildings that would allow our administrators and our teachers to educate our children, the children of today and the children of tomorrow, 21st century learning, for them to compete globally. The facilities are inadequate. That's the educational aspect of it. However, it goes beyond that. As a community, these 2 facilities will benefit the community. Everyone sitting in the audience here and at home, it benefits you. Recognize the fact that the tax burden on some is unaffordable. And it's your right, and come out and vote against it if you can't afford it. That's a legitimate response. Not one based upon anger, but one based upon your pocket. If you cannot afford it, you have the right to come out and vote now. However, I think there's an obligation here for the older generation to do more or leave the younger generation in a better position than you had. I know the gentleman, my neighbor, spoke earlier about what he has paid to give this community, but that doesn't stop. Every older generation has to, or my opinion is, the older generation contributes and leave something better to the next. These are 2 buildings that would teach children for generations to come. So I ask you, when you put it all aside, come out Monday night, support this additional increase. The need is there, the need doesn't go away. There are other ways that it'll have to be funded somehow that will be more costly down the road. So I ask you to come out Monday, support it, followed by next Friday at the ballot box. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. If there's no further questions, we'll adjourn. And again, I'll see you on Monday night. And bring all your friends, at least the ones that are going to support this.